Welcome to the Rex Andrews Show. If you are a first time listener, glad to have you. Glad to have you in the conversation and welcome to the program. And I'll tell you this, if you are brand new, I'm not afraid to beg. I am a well dressed beggar. So if you like what you're listening to, please give us a 5-star rating. For those who are returning, thank you, as always. Because of you and our great guests, the show has cracked into the top 10 fastest growing podcasts in the world, which is pretty exciting because there's over 1 million choices in the iTunes stores. And mentioning that, if you do not like where you're listening to your podcast today, don't fret. We are on 23 platforms, so you can find us anywhere from the biggest platforms down to the smallest on social media. And of course, we always recommend that you stop by the show website, rexandrewshow.com, to check out the bios and information about all of our guests. So our previous guests, our current guests today, and also those coming up in the future. So we're excited to bring you a new story today. You know, that's what the show is all about, is learning about interesting people, interesting topics. And I'm really excited about this guest. I've been had her on the radar here for a couple months to get her on. So life has been happening on both sides of these issues, and so we finally got her. So let me explain who she is. She's pretty exciting. She's an operatic soprano. Okay, so you're going to follow a theme here. She is the founder of Concert Rebels. Now, we're going to find out what that one is here in a minute. She also describes herself as a operatic activist. Now, that's a term I have never heard, so we're going to unpack that one in a big way. She's also a mom, a wife, and she's a gardener and even a baker. So I'd like to welcome to the show today, Chelsea Hollow. Chelsea, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me today, Rex.
Glad to have you on the show. So real quick, for those who might be following along, because a lot of our people are multitasking, they might be on a device, a computer, what have you, in addition to listening. Could you give out the best way for people to get in touch with you, follow your work, and so that way they can follow along as we have our conversation today?
Yeah, I think the central place is my website, chelseahollow.com, and that's ChelseaHollow.com. You can also find me at Chelsea Hollow on Twitter and Chelsea Hollow Soprano on Instagram.
Fantastic. I appreciate you. And I appreciate you also spelling that, because sometimes people have artistic presentations of their name. We'll call it that way. Okay, Chelsea, if you've listened to the show, we talked about this a little bit before coming on air. We like to tell people stories. That's what the show's all about. I'm a huge consumer of biographies and have been forever. And so I'm bringing to the world through the show lots of interesting people and interesting topics. And to do that, I always feel like we have to take a look way back to see what the influences are in who you are today. So we like to start all the way back. So where were you born? Where did you grow up? Do you have siblings? Did you have siblings that survived your harassment? Did you, your parents, what your family life was like? And if your parents were involved in careers, what were they doing? Because a lot of times that impacts people positively and negatively. So it's a long list. We'll hop through some of your interests and things. I would imagine, I would guess some of the things you were interested in as a youth. But don't worry, I will ask questions and remind you of that big long list. So let's take us back to the beginning. Chelsea, where were you born?
So I was born in Westlake, California, which is in LA County, but I always we lived in Ventura County in Thousand Oaks, which was just across the border.
Okay.
But yeah, I grew up. It was a very loving family. My parents are spontaneous and fun artist type. My dad is a landscaper. My mom is a hairdresser and a painter. My dad also plays drums, and we often had like jam sessions. He's a set drummer. So I grew up with rock and roll and Led Zeppelin, and yeah, that's
How
my
fun.
early life. Yeah.
So siblings?
Yes, I have two siblings, Jenna and Thomas. They're both younger, and they are fabulous people in their own right. My sister works with children with autism, and she lives in San Diego. And my brother is also a singer. He does more musical theater, and he's performing in Los Angeles.
Fantastic. So I don't think it's going to be much of a stretch to understand what you might have been interested growing up, with a mother that was a painter and a dad was drummer, and you had a lot of Led Zeppelin and jam sessions going on. So I'm assuming music was a passion of yours and how you spent some time.
Yeah, music was very important to me. I wanted to be a singer from my earliest memories. But I do remember I was obsessed with Mariah Carey.
Okay.
And at some point, I think I was about 12 or 13 when she kind of went downhill
Hmm.
mentally. And I just remember thinking it was the fame. It was this like so much fame and pressure that led her to be like my idol and then kind of fall. And I completely turned my back on it and didn't want to be a singer for the longest time. And I was very passionate about science and physics, and I had decided I was going to go to school to be a physicist and kind of followed that path for a long time until college when I was at community college. And I had always been in bands and stuff and played guitar and did singer songwriter things, but I wasn't trying to become a singer. But in college, I did a study abroad that was a half art and half music program.
Okay.
And I found classical music, and I kind of realized, oh, I could be the most famous, well accomplished opera singer in the world, and still most people wouldn't know who I was. So
Exactly.
I fell in love with classical music, the craft of it. I think also I've always been interested in languages and in tradition, and so there's so much culture and storytelling and language use in opera that it was very compelling, and I started my music degree.
Fantastic. Wow, that's quite a jump to go from being someone who was wanted to be a physicist over to an opera singer. Now, where were you on your study abroad? Where'd you go?
I went to. It was really cool. They traced the arts and humanities as they kind of like grew in the Western tradition. So we started in Florence, Italy, and
Hmm.
we were there for a few weeks, and then we went to Rome, and then we made our way to Paris. And so we would be, learning in our normal textbook. This whole program was actually through my community college.
Oh, wow.
But we would be learning about, Michelangelo and Dante and all these awesome, Renaissance painters and artists and thinkers. And we would, the next day, we'd go on a walking tour and we'd see all these pieces that we just had seen in our textbook. It was really awesome. And so then we moved towards Rome, which took us back in history, obviously.
Yes.
um, and then we went to Paris and kind of finished off. We did several tours at the Louvre. It was an amazing opportunity because they gave us vouchers for any museum we went to. We were
Wow.
able to go get it reimbursed. So you would just be walking, with friends, and there'd be some, tiny, tiny hole in the wall museum. We found the Salvador Dali museum this way, and we'd take our receipts back to school and get reimbursed. And it was wonderful. I loved it.
Fantastic. So was that an entire year, a semester? How long was it?
Just a semester. Yeah.
Okay. That's still amazing. That's one thing I really appreciate. Traveled in Europe quite a bit on business way back in the day. And, the depth of culture there is deeper here than in the United States. And I don't mean just age, I mean depth. I mean, it's more across the board in the cultures. Um, Also, too, I just love the history. I mean, to go back and walk into buildings that were built in the 1200s or the 1300s, the 1400s,
Yeah. Or
and
even the
then
cobblestones, just
yes,
walking along. I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, how many people have walked on these stones?
yeah, or like the Appian Way, where the Roman soldiers took the headstones and were laying them down as part of the road. So
Right.
it's the history marvels me, and that's why we used to live outside of Connecticut, and well, we lived in Connecticut, just outside of New York, and the cemeteries. I would go and look at the cemeteries and run into Boston places, and you'd see graves from the 1500s, the 1600s, and you're like, wow, that's depth. That's depth that we don't have. I live out here outside of Boulder. We think something that's very old is 150 years old.
Right.
150, big deal,
Yeah.
right? So, was it specifically, I want to ask you about this. Was it specifically, where did you run into the opera? I'm assuming it was on this semester, right?
Yeah. So in this semester, we also, the same voucher uh, return was true for concerts. We could go to any concerts. And so, in Paris, I remember going to the ballet and to all these things. And we would just have to write a report on it. And it was great.
Yeah.
Um, but I had brought my guitar, and one of the teachers was actually a music teacher. And she encouraged me to audition for the music program when we got back. And I had never had voice lessons before, and I thought, well, that would be good because I should learn how to sing. I really enjoy singing and writing music, and so I was still thinking I was going to be a physicist, but and working towards that with my GE. But I had these voice lessons, and they were classical, but I was thinking they would lead to just a better understanding of my voice. But I fell in
Sure.
love with it.
Hmm.
Music was the hardest thing I ever did. Honestly, school was so easy for me. I graduated high school with a 4.0 in all honors and AP courses. The
Sure.
standard stuff was easy. I remember taking my chemistry notes backwards. I could write backwards. So,
Wow.
those things were just like me. I was bored. Um, when I started music, I didn't know anything. I didn't know how to read music. I didn't know, and by the second semester or the second year, I was the tutor of the music theory program. So it just, I think for me, I found a whole new area that I had no experience in besides the singing part of it, and it was just really wonderful.
Now, you've made your career in opera, but so was there somebody who kind of poked you in the eye and said, "Hey, Chelsea, you really need to focus on opera," or did you more stumble into it, or
I
how'd
see.
that
Well, the
happen?
vocal program was classical, and
Okay.
so I just kind of fell in love with it and I pursued it.
Okay.
But yeah, I think my first opera that I went to, I was still thinking I was going to be a pop singer, at this point, or not like be a pop singer, but just make my voice better. Um, and I saw Carmen at LA Opera, and
Okay.
it just blew my mind. I couldn't believe the romance and the death and the story and the
Yeah.
the humanity on that stage was just palpable, and it was so much fun. And Carmen is a great first opera for anyone. While I just
Sure.
put that out there, it's like any great TV show we have today,
Yeah.
and most of us know all of the songs already because they're used a lot for soundtracks. But anyway, yeah, it was fabulous, and I just started getting more interested in opera, and I pursued it, and I left the idea of physics behind, and I continued in music, and I soon transferred to San Francisco State, and it became a little more serious there. And yeah.
Okay. So let me ask you this question real quick. Um, you obviously fell in love with it doing these voice lessons, but what I'm trying to ask you is, um, was there, looking back, was there one particular individual that just poked you in the eye and said, "Chelsea, you need to go do this," or
No, I think
was this
honestly it was the
self-discovery?
opposite. It was a
Okay.
lot of people saying, "You're really behind. You're not going to catch up. You have this little tiny voice." My voice is a specialty voice. I'm a coloratura soprano, and so I do this extremely high singing. It's a rare voice type, and because it's rare, there aren't a lot of roles written for it, right?
Okay.
So there were a lot of people who were just like, "Oh, it's cute. You're gonna try to sing opera, but you should do musical theater, or you should do Gilbert and Sullivan." Was a lot recommended. But those roles didn't feel right for me. I didn't enjoy them. And as I got more into my degree, I just fell in love with different composers who did write for my voice. So Mozart wrote a lot for me, Strauss and Debussy, and a lot of the modern composers. And so now my passion is mostly new music because there's just a lot of cool stuff for my voice. But yeah, I think I was more fighting to be to have a chance. It was something that I cared a lot about and I was interested in, and um, yeah, it finally started to happen.
Okay, I'm going to have to ask you to pause for a second because someone decided they want to vacuum this morning. And so we got a good break point there. Hold on. So when did you get to do your first performance that was public? Okay, so not just practice at home or voice lessons.
Yeah, well, I had performed already, in my own stuff before classical. Um, at Actually, I was in several bands, so my first public performances were when I was very young. But um, as far as classical, it's part of any performance program is going to be public performances. And so we did, small shows where we would each sing, one piece, and then my first opera that was not at school was a Gilbert and Sullivan. It was a cool Bollywood take on the Sorcerer, and it was really fun. We had some Hindu inspired dancing and instruments, and it was great. It was really fun. So I think that was my first you know, live performance that
Live
wasn't
performance
in
of opera.
school.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. And what age were you at that?
I was probably 20.
Okay, 20. So, what did your parents think? I mean, obviously, they were artistic and creative types. Were they very supportive, or were they like, well, Chelsea, maybe you need to go back and get a job as a professor somewhere? Or what
No,
were
they
their
were
thoughts?
great. They were both very supportive. I think my father, I think, always wished he was able to pursue his music, and he really is extremely talented. But it didn't work out for him that way, and so he was always super supportive of me doing that. And I think also throughout it, I was teaching voice lessons, and so I already had quite a bit of income through music, and it was pretty clear that I wasn't going to suffer.
Okay, fantastic. No, I always ask that because I've had a couple of people who I've interviewed along the way who their parents weren't supportive of the things that they were stepping into, and that turned into a motivator also too.
Yeah.
It can be fantastic. So, tell me a little bit about being the founder of the Concert Rebels.
Yeah. Well, in 2019, I did a concert based on feminism. It was, um, I called it Voice for the Voiceless, and we kind of went through this huge um, kind of chronological experience of female perspective and the feminist movement, and it was so rewarding for me that I realized, in school we're not taught that we can create these recitals all by ourselves, that we can come up with an idea, a theme, and commission all this new work and put together a very clear program that has to do more with something we're passionate in. And so I thought Concert Rebels would be a great opportunity for me to spread this knowledge and to help other singers do what I was doing. So a friend and I had been talking about it for a long time. Maria Caicedo is another soprano in my area, and we just decided to start moving towards making that happen. And so right now it's still in the very early stages,
Okay,
but we have a cool program with high school students in the Bay Area where it's happening at the Ruth Asawa School of the Arts vocal department. So we talked to the students almost a year ago. I guess not. It was about September when they were realizing that they were going to have probably stay inside for all of spring and they weren't going to be able to do singing together. So they asked
right.
us to create a program for them. So we talked to the kids and we gave them the opportunity to write their own poetry. Now, I should take a back step really quickly that in classical music, there is art music, which is where a composer is inspired by a poem, and they take that poem and they write it as a song. They turn the poem into lyrics, and it's a more intimate way of experiencing classical music. It's really, you get all of these different perspectives. You get the perspective of the poet, and then the composer, and then the artists, playing the piano and singing it. And so you just get this kind of a lot of humanity right in one performance. And so I started thinking about using these kids' poems as their art music that they would be singing, which is cool because most poetry that we have turned into song is like written by old guys
Hmm.
from a long time
From a
ago
long
too.
time
And
ago.
so
Okay,
the perspectives for these students, art music is often what you start singing when you're starting classical, and so
sure.
these singers are like trying to fall in love with opera and classical music, and all of these perspectives are so far from what they're experiencing. So we had the kids write their own poetry, and then I also found poetry that I thought was really appropriate to their experience by other local young composers. And we commissioned 9 new pieces of work, which they're learning right now. And so
Hmm.
they have their art songs and they're really fun. And we had one girl is a trans girl. She wrote a poem about her experience as a trans girl. We had another student write about being a student in 2020. And this is like this amazing classical song it could easily be a rock opera song. It's so fun, and it's all about just the frustrations of it. And there was another really talented poet who wrote about insomnia in high school and how just like her mind works in the middle of the night, and it's a fabulous poems. So these kids are now singing their own poetry or their colleagues' poetry and really connecting to each other, even though they are at home and not,
Sure.
with each other singing. So it's been a fabulous program. That's a big part of Concert Rebels. Another part is helping other singers put on concerts like I did with my feminist concert.
Okay. So are you doing these online currently then? Because I know California is not quite out of the woods as far as the restrictions.
Yeah. So yes, it's all the student performance is all for their school, and so they're doing that all virtually, and the kids will record their performances, and then it'll be kind of shared with them and their parents privately on a virtual stream. For the concerts that I've been building, I've been doing a lot of music videos. I've been building up, possible virtual stream concerts, but it's still hard to do a live stream as a singer in the Bay Area.
Hmm.
Most venues won't let you sing yet,
Right.
so that's tough. But it's mostly, it takes a long time to build these concerts up, so it's mostly stuff for the future.
Okay,
I'm not
great.
performing a ton right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've seen a lot of that with the folks that I've interviewed that are in performance. I had a lady who was a career kind of corporate band, for events and things like
Yeah.
that. And it's been a difficult year for them, very difficult year.
Yeah. It's amazing how much I thought I was just like a self-confident person. I
Right.
didn't realize how much of my identity was tied up with my performance. And yeah, it has been a whirlwind. This year has been, it kind of oscillates, I feel like, between these highs of, oh, I'm going to do this cool project. I'm going to release this video. And then the lows of just, there's no audience experience anymore. There's no connection to an entire audience of ears. I'm just used to having that, and I miss that.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I think the entire arts community has been, I don't know if it's the right words, but I'm going to use them anyway, severely damaged
Yeah.
through this whole the lockdown stuff. And I think so, and I think also for people who are the audiences for that, I know I'm just craving to go to a concert or a sports game or something that is largely attended. The group and the crowd dynamics are just, I don't know, it's just something I think people need.
Yeah, I think we all have this desire to be part of something bigger than ourselves, right?
Sure.
Whether that's sitting in an audience and experiencing live music or a game. I mean, when you're all cheering for the same home
Yeah.
run or whatever game you're going to, it feels like you're part of a different organism than just yourself. And I think we've all been home for a long time and we've been making do. I think people are resilient and doing wonderful things, but it is different. It is not the same as connecting and being with other people just because. Or for the artists, doing an opera is like, not only are you working with the other singers on the stage, you're working with all of those instruments in the
Yes.
orchestra, all the conductor, the stage director, the lighting. Like there's so much humanity on that stage that is making this happen. This thing that's larger than any one person, and that just is impossible right now. And I just the idea of singing with one other musician right now would be, it's overwhelming to think about what that's going to feel like to finally get to do again.
Well, yeah, even just for me, just I not being on the stage part of it, but just something as simple as being in a stadium, listening to someone sing the national anthem, and that swelling of your heart and that connection and that feeling, the crowd and the music and everything. It's just something that's different. It's
Yeah.
hard to attach, and I can't even imagine what that would be like being someone who performs. I mean, I've spoken in front of a lot of people, but that's a little different than actually, singing and performing. So that's
I think that's
fantastic.
harder.
Well, it just depends, right?
I,
You know,
this
when the
speaking it publicly is terrifying to me, yet I can
well,
sing in front of millions and be fine.
sure. Well, how I look at it here is you just find a couple people in the audience and you pop between them, and that's who you're talking to. So you kind of drowned out the rest of them. You
I
drowned out
like
the
it. Yeah.
rest. So anyway, now being this activist, this operatic activist, is that what else are you doing besides the rebels that you're trying to spread the goodwill or knowledge of being an activist?
Yeah, I think it's twofold. I think there are a lot of things that are wrong with the music industry that I have been slowly coming to awareness around.
Hmm.
And So I think there's part of it is just inspiring people to see how cool classical music can be. That again, when we think about the music that we listen to today, and it's often, a singer songwriter, or maybe there's a songwriter in the background, and then there's a singer who's, making it a reality, and then maybe there's a producer and a band, right?
Yeah.
But classical music is just, it's been curated to really deeply um, philosophize, I guess. Is that a verb?
Yeah, we'll take it.
um, but yeah, the philosophy and the depth that you can um, carry and hold space for, like communal processing, I think there's so much potential there. And in the past, classical music was often a source of communal processing and creativity outlets for a whole group of people sitting in an audience experiencing these ideas at the same time.
Hmm.
um, and we've kind of gotten away from that in the last 100 years or so. Classical music has become repeated music. It's music of the past that is just repeated, right? And
Sure.
it's this arching theme or genre that includes all of these things from the past. And it's just very hard to stay relevant with these old stories. Mozart stories, if you know about what was going on in the 1700s and you know about the dance themes he was using,
Yeah.
um, it's amazing. It's almost like Hamilton. He's throwing so much shade. We all notice um, the Elton John character that comes out, as the king in Hamilton, right? And it's like, oh my gosh, he's so like, vanilla in comparison to what everyone else is talking about and exploring in Hamilton, and it's so palpable. Mozart's doing the same things, but we that doesn't come across to a modern audience, so it's boring.
Yeah.
And so going back to this idea of operatic activism, I think it's twofold in that I want to make more compelling music so that I want to be an activist in the operatic community. And I also believe that opera can be a venue for activism in society. And so it all started with that feminist concert that I did. I think it all happened in 2016 after the election. I was feeling just really, I had a 1 year old daughter, and I hyperventilated when this misogynist was elected. And I'm not saying, I don't know if your podcast is political, so I don't want to
No,
go
we
too
don't.
deep
We
in
don't do
that.
politics.
Yeah, that's fine. But for me, it was just this realization of like, how do I raise a strong woman? And how do I show her she can stand up for herself? And so I started putting together this recital, and it was so fulfilling for me to just see, oh, I can use music to fill this deeper need in my community and in myself. And it it was so rewarding that I just wanted to do more of it. And so that's what I've been doing. Through the pandemic, I wanted to give back to my artist community, and financially I'm stable because my husband's in tech, and so I don't need my art income. And so we thought, let's invest in this idea of operatic activism. And so I put out a call for proposals, asking composers to just, let me know, like, propose an idea for a song that has something to do with activism for you. And oh my gosh, I think it was over 100 proposals
Wow.
um, from all over the world, and I commissioned 7 new pieces of music having to do with everything from um, the Flint, Michigan water crisis to AOC's speech on the floor addressing Representative Yoho's remarks, and we did stuff on the Turkish femicide, and there was a fabulous piece setting the text of there's these girls from the Holocaust. They were young girls, and to kind of keep hope, they created a club for themselves in one
Hmm.
of their concentration camps. They're called the Girls of Room 28. And they had a motto and a pledge. And with this pledge, this composer used the pledge and set it to music. And so
Okay.
it's kind of like an anthem. And it's very powerful, and it's in Czech and Hebrew and German, and it interweaves all these ideas and It's really cool. So yeah, all of these were just activism from the past, activism from right now, and it was really exciting to just be part of something again bigger than myself, which I just so desperately crave.
Well, that's great. So I wanted to go back and talk just a little bit further about current music.
Hmm.
I think there's some interesting things. My assessment of Western culture, especially United States Western culture, is that we're kind of a lazy culture these days. Um, everything needs to be easy. It needs to be instant, nothing difficult. And so I think if you look at because I'm like we talked offline before I started, I'm a huge musical buff. I have, several thousand songs in my library, and everything. I do have some classical. I do have some Phantom of the Opera and a lot of John Williams type music and some Mozart and Bolero and stuff like that. I have a wide variety of things, but you can't just be a solo artist with opera in most cases. It takes a lot more to do that. So that's an element. But if you look at modern music, what's popular culturally, um, I get a little frustrated and probably even disgusted with some of the stuff like the Cardi B and some of those things. I'm not a huge fan of rap, even though my kids grew up with it. That's what their friends listen to. So I just think that that's not. I don't know. I'm more of a person. I don't think people need to. My grandfather used to say there's two types of class: first and none. And I just have a hard time with people who are using music and dropping f-bombs and just stuff like that. I kind of struggle with that. And then also a genre that I get struggle with is the current modern country. It's all bubblegum. It's the same stuff. It's stuff over and over and over. So not not dissing any current artists or performers in those spaces. People find their art, they find their lane, they do what they do. That's great. That's what makes the world individual. But I do think there is nothing like the sound of a full orchestra. There's nothing like the sound of people with very, very talented voices who are, striking those notes and doing those things. And like you say, part of something bigger than just somebody on a mic, kind of rapping it out type of thing. So I think I like what you're doing, and I like the focus of that because I don't know, to me, it just shows depth.
Yeah.
You know, there's a
Yeah, I
depth
think
to
it's
that.
hard. I think, classical music, just because it's lesser known, I think there's a lot of freedom for it to be less affected by commercialism. I think a lot of pop music, if you're going to really make it, it's not the singers and the songwriters making most of those, choices. There are
No,
so many just producers and
yeah, big corporate.
managers,
Yep.
right, who are just kind of pumping out what they think will be, you know, make lots of money for them. And so I think I would agree that a lot of that kind of modern commercialized music it's missing, it's lacking, because it's like when you sell a house and you want to paint everything white so it pleases more people, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I think that's what they're doing, and they're losing a ton of artistry in that. And I don't think it means that the artists themselves are lacking in that expression, but probably the music that they're allowed to share with the
Sure.
public, or the hits that we just learn of are maybe not as compelling as the less mainstream artists, or songs that are further back on the album. I'm sure every you don't get to be. I used to think Taylor Swift was this like I just knew her by name and I knew some of her songs and I was like, ugh, who is this person?
Yes.
But honestly, I think she's a really great singer. I had to research her to do a voiceover gig, and they wanted that kind of pop sound. And so I was listening to a lot of her stuff, and her technique is really good. And so
Yeah.
I was inspired by how she was singing. And um, it's not opera, but it's pop. Pop is hard to sing. It's not healthy. We want a lot of tension in the sound because it's conveying emotion in that way, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not easy to do that with any sort of longevity.
Yeah.
She does it fabulously. So anyway, I started kind of digging in more, and I thought, wow, if you become this, it kind of brings me back to that Mariah Carey story, right? She is an artist.
Oh,
Taylor Swift,
her
Mariah
voice is
Carey,
amazing. Yeah.
yeah, these singers, are so talented, and their connection to the music and their ability to bring these really, often crappy songs to life
Yeah.
shows their artistry. Not everyone can make that happen. Or I was talking to someone, a student recently, about Stevie Wonder, who of course we all love, but I never realized how cheesy his lyrics are.
Oh,
And so I was saying, he is the only person who can just make this right. You have to just 100% authentically believe these words to make it happen. And I would never think, anything cheesy about Stevie Wonder, but when you break down the songs, you're like, huh, is that really what he's singing? That is, I could never get away with that. And so I think that's artistry, like being
yeah.
able to take music that is generally acceptable or understood, that's easily approachable, and making it really something. I think that is artistry. So I think it is true. There is a different feeling when there is a whole orchestra. Operatic singing is very hard and requires a ridiculous amount of focus and awareness on little tiny muscle changes.
Yes.
it's it's not something that is easy to do. And I think we do have this kind of respect for that. But I don't think we should lose respect for the other artists that are out there. I think there is a lot, especially under the radar. There's a ton of music that's more underground that is just fabulously exciting.
Yeah, there's so much, the barriers of entry to audiences have been removed essentially. Anybody with a mic and some music and mixing software, you can put together things, throw it up on YouTube, throw your link out on social media, and you're there. So it's crazy. YouTube statistics about 6 months ago, there's 500 hours worth of content uploaded every minute.
I believe it. Yeah.
So it's that the barriers are, but another thing I think that happened, and again, I'm no music aficionado. This is just my knucklehead analysis. I kind of look at things, but I think when the electric guitar was popularized, it changed and pivoted popular music because we now had the capability to create these endless beats when you throw in drumming and the electric guitar, and it just changed a lot of music. It really did change a lot of music. And so, and electric guitar can be as engaging and like some of the heavy, fast stuff, all the way down to just something as simple as maybe some of the ballads that like Buckethead or some of the people who are writing just instrumental type music and doing it from guitar. So I think the electric guitar changed the landscape of popular music.
Yeah. I think there's a really great, I think it's a TED Talk by David Byrne you would probably love it. It's all about how different venues change the way we write music.
Okay.
And so he breaks down, the earliest classical music was for these like smaller audiences. It was more intimate. And so the music is quieter and there's a lot of nuance in dynamic, right? Classical music is very hard to reproduce in any sort of audio recording because you have to be able to capture the quietest sound and these bombastic, loud, 80 orchestra members blasting at the same time with singers. It's very hard to make music that you can like listen to in your car without having to turn the volume up and down, right?
Right.
And so as we started to get more towards these huge venues where everything, if you think of like David Bowie or like some huge, amphitheater, you can't, it's very hard to project all that music without amplification. And once you add that amplification, you just, again, you lose kind of those varieties. Everything gets more condensed and compressed, right? And so you think of pop music today, and you don't have to adjust the volume in your car when you listen to any pop music. And so I think that that's also a huge, a cool way of understanding maybe how music has evolved through the years. And he even goes further into talk about how now we all have like headphones in all the time. And so that's even more true now that you have these, it's very rare to find a space that's quiet enough to listen to a classical recording and really experience those dynamic ranges.
Yeah, that's you're right. You're up on that. So you're a mom now. How many kids do you have?
Just one. She's
Just
5.
one.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah, great age.
Yeah, she's living her best life right now. She has no idea the pandemic is a bad thing. She's just like home with mom and dad.
Mom and dad are there all the time, huh?
She loves it. She misses her friends, and we did have a little bit of a breakdown yesterday. And I realized, oh, she hasn't been around like people who mess up, like kids mess up, in what, a year now. And so she did something simple, like she turned 2 pages in her Lego instructions, and it she skipped this page, and so she got so embarrassed. She's like, I'm so bad at this. You're a master builder and I'm not a master builder. And she got so emotional, and I realized, you're around adults who much we must seem like we just know everything.
Yeah.
And she doesn't see like other kids fall, or and so we had a big conversation about how it's it's tough being a kid. You're learning how to use your hands. You're learning all your muscles, and your brain is learning every day. And but yeah, so I think that was our first really big breakdown of the pandemic, for her.
Yeah, my youngest is 18 and a senior in high school, and she hasn't been in a building since in a year and a half, essentially.
Yeah.
So half of her high school experience was kind of stolen by the pandemic because, there's been no proms, no homecomings, no sports, and she was in palms and those types of things. And so, and a very engaging social life around education too. And so that just got clipped. And so it's been an interesting experience. It's going to be interesting to see how these kids look back at that year or year and a half that they've been out of school.
Yeah, I think this year has been so hard for high school students and early college students. I think they're just that whole period of time, when I think back to how much self growth and identity I built in myself around like figuring out who I was, and, going to concerts by myself and being with
Yeah.
friends and camping. I went camping like every weekend with my friends when I was the last 2 years of high school. And I mean, I can't imagine for these kids what they've lost in that time, being able to just be out of their homes and in their own lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such an exploratory time of life and
Yeah.
figuring out who they are. So yeah, it's been an interesting run there. So what's next on the horizon for you?
Who knows? It's hard to know. I have a lot of projects that are ready to go. I have about 5 shows that are just postponed, and we don't know when they will happen. So yeah, it's hard to know. I am slowly trying to kind of figure out how to run a nonprofit, and if that's what I really want to do with Concert Rebels, or if I want to try to attach it to another program and let it be just an individual kind of wing of a larger organization. But I've been learning a lot. I've been learning about video editing. I've been learning about, putting myself out there in ways that are not just auditioning and singing that way. So I think that's good. But yeah, I have no idea when performance will return. And
Yeah.
I keep saying to my husband, I just miss doing something I'm good at.
Right. Yeah.
I'm really good at opera, and I worked really hard to just be able to throw on a gown and go on stage and sing my heart out. And I feel like I was just hitting my stride when all of this kind of shut down. And yeah, it's hard. It's hard to know what comes next.
So with your niche of a soprano, is that something you could demonstrate very easily for us?
Oh, I could try. I'm not warmed
I
up
mean,
enough.
I don't have an orchestra behind me. Okay, so just
I could. Do you want me to play a recording? I could share
yeah,
the
if
sound.
or yeah, I was just interested because I don't know hardly anything about opera, and so
Yeah,
I was just wondering if you had something, or you could just sing a bar or two that would let us hear your voice.
I would be. I don't think it would be a good representation of myself if I just
Just
sang
yeah,
right now.
no
Um,
acapella, huh?
yeah, but I could. Let's see. Do you want something modern or something?
Whatever you choose.
Okay.
I'm cutting you off guard here because I've never asked a comedian to be funny. I've never asked
Yeah.
anybody, an author, to start writing for me on the podcast. But I thought, well, hey, I wonder if she could do a bar or two and just show us that the depth of her voice, because I know that what you are, the type of voice that you have, is very unique.
Yeah. Here, I'll play a. This is one that. Let's see. I'll have to switch it so I can share. Do you want me to share the video or do you
Yeah,
want
that's
the?
great. Yeah, just
Okay,
share it real quick.
cool. Let me do this.
Yeah, and for those who are not playing along, get to see it, then go listen in on YouTube.
Yeah, so this is a new opera called The Tempest. It's based on the Shakespeare. And Thomas Adès, is the composer. And he writes this music that is unearthly high. It is just so much higher than anything I've ever sung. So it'll give you an idea. The character is Ariel. She is, this kind of sprightly character. And so the voice is up there. The text, because it's very hard to understand up here, is fear to the sinner. She's kind of saying, you have to be scared of this tempest that's being created, and you must listen, and I'm going to do all these horrible things. So the song is 2 minutes. Do you want me to play the whole thing or
No, just do a little bit
just
of it.
part of it?
Yeah,
Okay.
just part of it. That'd be great.
All right, here we go.
Now, not that air. We're waiting for this to catch.
Can you hear that?
And we're not. Okay. It's not working out on our current technology. So
Okay.
we're just going to have people go find it. Now, is that posted on your website?
It is. It's on my website. Hold on, it's still playing in my ear, so let me turn
Okay.
it off.
All right. We tried a little extemporaneous. Okay. And I saw that you were in it with a piano accompanist there. So quite different. So.
How do I turn it off?
Because I can barely hear it, just way, way in the background, but it's not
How
coming
strange.
through.
Sorry.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine.
It's not
Again,
coming
that's just the authenticity. If I could talk today,
Authenticity.
authenticity of our show. We just kind of do things. So we're
Yeah,
nice
we're
trying.
learning all this technology now.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Yes. Well, people can find it at chelseahollow.com/video, and there's lots of options there. Um, but yeah, it's kind of I sing mostly in a normal range where people can um, hear. Let's see. I can sing a little bit here.
Okay.
Let me know if the gain isn't picking up it or if it's too loud.
Okay.
Is that level okay?
Yeah, that's good.
All right. So that's unwarmed up.
Unwarmed up. Wow.
I could probably go higher, but I don't want to,
No, that's good.
force nature.
No,
Yeah,
we
and
don't want to
the high
strain you.
notes are always kind of there. Um, and yeah, so it's all that really high stuff.
So what do you see as the future of opera? Is it gaining popularity, or what do you think?
I think it has the opportunity to. I think there are a lot of new operas coming out that are doing what I'm doing. I'm not doing anything. This idea of concert rebels and operatic activism is not new, but I'm trying to give it a brand so that other people can kind of get inspired to get involved. And yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff coming out. There's a new opera. So there's an old opera called Barber of Seville, and it's about this barber who is just kind of he does everything for the village, and there's all these storylines that happen, but he's kind of putting everything together. And there is, I think is it at Philadelphia? It's either no, I think it's at Chicago. Is doing they're making it like a barber shop.
Okay.
And it's all Black artists, and it's like hip hop and rap inspired classical music, and it is so awesome and so cool. Extremely talented people doing really innovative things, and I can't wait to see what happens with that. There are so many operas that have gotten, I think, a bad rap for being new music that are starting to, because for a long time people just wanted stuff that was, they knew, opera is hard to get into, so they wanted something that they were familiar with.
Sure.
But I think my idea also of like operatic activism is using this concept of, well, if the drama is contemporary, if people immediately understand, that they are listening to text of someone today, or an issue, if they're unraveling issues that are contemporary, then the newer music, that you don't need a music degree to understand what's going on. And so I think, yeah, I think there is a good future potential for opera.
Well, fantastic. I think you're doing some great things. And I thank you for coming on with us today because you showed us a part of music and art that not everybody's engaged in. So I like that. I like that a lot. I like unique things. So the last question, which I always ask all my guests, and if you've listened, you know what's coming. So everybody has these things called a bucket list, and that's all the things they want to do before they die. And heck, I've even interviewed the bucket list guy, Trav Bell from Australia. Great
Wow.
podcast interview. Anyway, there's always an opposite to everything in the world. If you're a physics person, you understand that there's an opposite for everything. So there's this list out there of things you don't want to do or never want to do. It rhymes with bucket and starts with an F, but I'm not going to say that. Okay. So what might be on your F-it list? Now, for me, while you're thinking,
Okay.
it's one of the things is really simple is I'm not eating sardines again. Tried that, done that. Nope, not going back there. Not going back to Mexico City. Not going to do a sweat lodge again. Nope. Those are things I've done. In fact, I even did an episode on the sweat lodge experience, and no, sorry. So what might be on Chelsea's F-it list?
Whew, that is a really good question. I did not listen far enough in your episodes to prepare for this one.
Well, that's the
That's a
best
good
part
one. I
because
love
when you're
it.
not prepared, then we get the genuine answer, right?
Yeah. Let's see. I mean, I can't stand bananas, so that would definitely be I will not eat bananas. I'm actually allergic to them, but I also do not like them. Um, so there's that. What am I not doing again? 3 months ago, I would have said I'm not putting on a bra again, but I've now come to the point in the pandemic where I think I'm back into society a little bit.
Okay. We just might draw the line right there, Chelsea. That might be TMI. You might have just crossed my podcast rules of TMI. Okay, but we'll take
Okay.
that one. We'll take that one. All right. Well, those are
Yeah.
great. I'm going to at least continue to call those great. I'm going to remember that phrase now forever. That's not fair. So thank you for sharing, whether it was filtered or not. We like that. That's great. So I appreciate you. So it was good to meet you today, and I look forward to having you back on. I'm circling back with a lot of guests on things that are especially been impacted by the pandemic. Okay, kind of see where things have rebounded to, because unfortunately, there's some things not coming back. You
Right.
know, I'm not sure we're going to ever see the popularity of movie theaters anymore
Hmm.
because that industry's been decimated. In most cases, they're not open anywhere,
Yeah.
and I think everybody's gotten used to watching stuff on small screens.
Yeah.
So if it does come back, I think it'll be in a different format. It might be in a dinner type setting or something. We'll see.
Yeah.
Hard to say. So, well, thank you. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I'll be looking for you, and we'll be following you, and we'll remember your effort list item for probably forever. So, just have to give you a hard time.
Leave it to the Bay Area person to push
That's
all the
right.
boundaries.
Yeah, my operatic activist went over the line, but that's okay. So, all right, my friend, good to meet you, and
Nice
we'll
to
look
meet
forward
you.
to having you back. All
Okay.
right.
Bye.
Okay, folks, that's it. We'll call that a wrap for this episode. Thank you for listening in again to the Rex Andrews Show. Don't forget to stop by the website at rexandrewsshow.com to check out all of our guests. And as always, what we say at the end of everything, just have three things to say: be safe, be bold, and make it a great day.